Hi, my name is Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be discussing the power of pre-reading at the University of Oxford. We are all slightly a bit too familiar with the pressure an average Oxford student is under, which gets amplified by the fact that our terms are very short. It's either 3 times 8 weeks, or if you're a master's student it can be a slightly bit different, but generally boils down to 3 times 10 weeks, which is effectively anywhere between like 24 and 30 weeks, which is in comparison to a whole year, which is 52 weeks, actually like barely half of it. But on the other hand, I hear what you're thinking. This means that we have loads of free time. Yes, we do. So in between all of the terms, we have what we call the vac, which is essentially free time to ourselves. We can do whatever. We go home. We're not at uni. However, I found out that you can use some of that free time in your vac to actually reduce the amount of pressure during term time with pre-reading. Pre-reading saved my life. I'm not even joking and I'm not exaggerating. Pre-reading actively saved my time at Oxford. I am not even joking. I am so happy that I went with pre-reading and also that I stuck with it, because it's quite easy to just give up on, because it's the fact, it's your free time. You know, you're doing this for yourself, and I'm so happy that I A, did it, and B, stuck with it. So let me explain you why and how I did it. So first, I suppose the how do you pre-read? It sounds so easy, right? But you do need a couple of things to be able to actually pre-read. You need the reading list, which is actually sort of the first hurdle, getting that reading list. Supposedly, you should be able to get it from your professors. Often they send it to you sort of like during the fact, but you can always reach out to your professors if you know what classes and courses you're going to take next term. You know probably also who your professors are going to be. So you can definitely like drop them an email in your final 2 weeks of your previous term to kind of see if you can get that reading list sorted. Sometimes they'll get back to you with the answer of, oh, it's not finalized yet, which makes sense because they also have the VAC to sort of finalize it, right? In that case, you can always reach out to students in the year above you. They have done this course, they have the reading list, they read their books, so why not reach out to them? I do suppose that sometimes that is not quite possible, as probably your students above in a 1-year master's, they're like out and about in the world. However, most of the time this stuff gets also published on the internet. I actually found out that for my course in modern languages, I was able to find the pre-reading list, or like the reading list, and it's like essentially like the syllabus for like the courses on the designated course pages. So effectively you can also just try and dig a bit on the internet or on the Oxford website or on the Oxford website where you're like logged in and stuff to try and find it, because it sure exists. Or just reach out to a student who went and did your course in the previous year. There is a little risk though. If you reach out to students to get an old reading list, things might change. That's like the only risk you take on at that point. But in all fairness, the most changes that I've noticed on my reading list were that out of like 12 books, maybe 1 or 2 were different, and some of them were like the exact same. So effectively, I would say just go with it, or just start reading the obvious one like once. Like if you're looking at like a particular period and one of those books is like definitely like a standout classic, they're probably not going to take it out. So maybe start with those until you get your actual reading list from your professor like during the VAC, and then you can sort of adjust, if that makes sense. So second point in terms of the how and why I particularly sad, try to find it out during your last 2 weeks of term, because you'll still be in Oxford, which means that if you have that reading list, you can go to the library and get the books and bring them home with you in the VAC. That's by far the cheapest option to get your books. Get them from one of the libraries or your college library and just bring them home during the VAC and read them. Either way, if that didn't work out, which it could, like 100% happens, always check your local libraries at home as well to see if they might have the books that you're looking for, or you can buy them online. Do keep in mind that if you're ordering books in a foreign language, which was for me the case, it's going to take time, and you're probably going to have to pay import duties to the UK now. So sort of my third point, I suppose, in terms of like actively reading them, which again, I understand you're at home, you'll have free time, you're not required to read these books right now. How do you tackle that? Well, what I did, I just summed up all the pages that I needed to read and divided them by the days that I had in the VAC, that I had left essentially once I got the books. So that turned out to be about like 200 to 300 pages a day, and that was fine, and that worked for me quite well, and I actively stuck to it. Even though sometimes I really didn't feel like reading for whatever reason, or I had other things planned, I really did try and stick with it. I did do some like error days in between, like for if something happened and I wasn't able to read or whatever. Effectively, I did that and I stuck with it, and I'm so happy that I did. Also, I didn't look at like font size or anything like that. I just stuck with the pages, and sometimes it took longer because some books just had a smaller font size, but I know you can make it as hard and complicated and difficult as you want to. I just divided the pages. And now I hear you thinking, how on earth do you remember all of these books that you've read in the VAC? Because the first book, by the time the VAC is over, you'll have forgotten. And I agree with you to an extent. So what I did, I took notes, but not like extensive notes, because either way, if you have read a book, even though it was like years ago, you will still remember the gist of the book, but you need some things to be like remembered by, right? So what I used to do is I would write down the characters' names, I would write down what the character traits were of that particular character, and I would write down what they contributed to like the main storyline, which is very, very basic. I didn't want to spend all my time taking extensive notes. I am really bad at remembering names. So if I'm already bad at remembering people's names, let alone fictional characters in books' names, it's not one of my strengths. So I really need to write down the names and what they were doing, because otherwise it will be gone. And on top of that, I highlighted in my books. Yes, I know, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing, I apologize. I am one of those people. I write in my books and I'm sorry for it, but it helps so much, for me at least though. But I highlighted all the passages and quotes and sentences that I either felt were very important or that I felt were very interesting and I could maybe use later on. So this meant that if I had to go back to a book, I'd go over my notes, I remember again who the characters were, which was my main issue with books, and then I would go in and read just the highlighted passages that I had, and that really gave me a full picture again of the book. And sometimes, if necessary, I read around the highlighted bits. I just went through a little bit of an excursion in my bookcase. Like, as you can see right there, those are my French books. This is what an average book of me looks like. So there will be some highlighted passages or sentences, and I'd highlight the numbers of the page to make sure that I noted to myself when I flip through the book that there is something on the page, and I have one spot to look at instead of like scanning all the pages. Either way, that's how I did it. So essentially, by the time I got my essay questions, I had already an idea on how to tackle the books and which books I wanted to use for this particular essay question. And I had also different ideas on which I would enjoy answering most, which is essentially also quite important, right? You need to enjoy the answer that you're giving to a question, if that makes sense. Either way. So this helped me greatly in that. And also in terms of doing my research and actually working on it, it was so incredibly helpful to have everything highlighted, because those were the things I was able to use in quotes, for example, or I was able to use these things to like go quickly through the book and have the most important things stand out to myself. I sort of filtered through those little bits and tend to use those in my essays. And of course I would read around them as well, because I just highlighted like a sentence and it has, you know, stuff that comes before that that's important in a sentence as well as after it. And it saved me so much time, because I didn't have to factor in that I needed to read the entire book from like the start. So I already got a little bit into the why, because it saved me so much time, which again, I'm going to repeat every single time. This meant that I could use the time that I saved for different things. Like I was able to hang out with friends, I was able to do fun stuff, I went to the ice skating rink, but most importantly probably for me was the fact that I was able to have an MCR position alongside my coursework and it didn't negatively affect my coursework. Also, on maybe a bit more like less fun notes, you never know if something is going to happen in your personal life. Like you could break a leg, right? You know, you could have a family member who falls ill or anything along those lines. Like you have a little buffer if you do this. Like you take off so much of the pressure on those like 8 weeks that you have to like squeeze everything into. By taking this like one little bit out with pre-reading, it will give you that extra buffer, which is actually quite nice. I do want to address like one slight misconception maybe. Pre-reading does not mean that you don't have to like read at all during term. Like you still have to read a book and you have to reread it in a way, but you don't have to, like, you take away the initial sort of encounter with the book, if that makes sense. And it will just save you so much time in terms of finding quotes and looking at your notes on the characters and that sort of thing, and where to look in the book for certain stuff. Like you'll sort of know where to find it because your notes on the characters will probably be in the same order of the book, so it makes it easier to just, you know, find stuff as well. Also, a little disclaimer: if you get your books from a library, whether it's your local one, whether it's an Oxford one, do not write in it with pen or highlighter. If you write in it, do it with pencil, and do not forget to erase it, because it's not nice for the next person, because you might find things important that another person doesn't, and some people don't like writings in their books, so please do not forget to erase it. Either way, pre-reading just saved me so much time in Oxford, and I can highly recommend it because it took so much pressure off during the term time, which was amazing, and I had time to do other things which I really enjoyed, because some things you can only do in Oxford, you cannot do them at home. Like reading, you can do at home. Oxford Oxford you cannot do at home. Either way, I also did struggle with it over Christmas for a bit, because obviously I was sitting there reading my pages and my family was like playing board games and stuff. You know, that's not nice always, but essentially don't get me wrong, I love French literature. It's just that it can be a lot sometimes in Oxford. I really enjoyed my course. Highly recommend the pre-reading. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope this helped you out for a little bit, and I see you in the next one. Have a good day. Bye.